Hi, I'm Martha.
And I'm Janet.
Welcome to the Holy Hiker podcast, where adventurous souls dare to tackle life's challenging trails using the Bible as our compass.
Today we'll be delving into the topic of waiting on God or waiting for God. Have you ever been in a position where you cannot do anything but wait? Where literally life forces you to wait? Um, so that will be the topic of our discussion. So, Martha, what does it mean to you to wait on God?
Well, I've heard some preachers say, I'll start with that because that can be a foundational concept, say that normally waiting seasons involve serving in some capacity, whether that's serving in our immediate families or serving in our community. Being a parent, I think, means serving. But I also think personally, to wait on God means not to act out of my urgency, if that makes sense. So if I think things should move along a lot faster than they're currently taking place, waiting on God at times, or at least in my life, has meant restraining that urge and saying, no, what was the last thing that he told me to do? And to camp around in that space. What about
Oof,
you?
oof. Something you said really caught my attention. You said waiting on God is almost restraining myself from acting in my urgency. In other words, we human beings want to get things quick. We want to get things like yesterday, like we never want to wait. That
Uh-huh.
if we are going to do things according to the will of God, according to God's ways, we are going to have to wait. And that reminds me of the story. It's not a story, actually. It's a story, but it's not a story because it was a life lived
Yeah.
of Abram before he turned. God changed his name to Abraham, and Sarai
Mm-hmm.
before God changed her name to Sarah.
Yeah.
And how you can imagine how they are this couple that love each other so dearly in that pit, in that ancient culture
Yeah.
where being childless was seen as a curse.
Hmm.
And here they are,
Yeah.
God pulls them out of from their clan or from their family and from their father's household.
Yeah.
And he says, you come, I'm taking you to a land I will show you. But you can imagine already at that time, Abram was 75. And he, of course, continues to say, I will bless you, I'll give you nations for, you will be a father of nations. Meanwhile, Abram
Mhm.
has no child of his own. Sarah has no child. In a culture where childlessness was seen as a curse.
Yeah.
So here they are, they walk with God. You would expect God to have said, okay, they have left their all they know, their country, their family, and their father's household. So since they've done that, let me give them the child that they want.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, that was not how the story went.
Hmm.
And they wait, and they wait, and they wait. 10 years down the line, they
Yeah.
have no child. But God said, I'm going to give you a child.
Hmm.
And I'm saying this because of what you said. It is restraining myself. What you said, waiting on God is restraining myself from acting out of my urgency.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Abram and Sarai did the promise got the better half of them.
Yeah.
They did not restrain themselves from acting out of their desire, from acting out of their urgency.
Mhm.
So lo and behold, Sarah says, "Hey, Abraham, it seems God has restrained me. Why don't you go into my maid and have a child? If she has a child on my knees, on my knees, then that child will be mine." Little did she know she had made the greatest. She had created problems, big problems for herself and for the family. Now, the family that was united, Abram Abram didn't need a lot of convincing. So it was like he was squatting and they pushed the one that was already squatting. So as the man of the house, he should have said, no, 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 no. God said.
Yeah,
So maybe he had also already been eyeing Hagar.
I don't know if we should be making assumptions, but
I mean, that's my opinion.
I
Because he should
agree.
have said, absolutely no, Sarah, I love you that much and I'm holding on to you.
Yeah.
But Sarah just said, hey, maybe do this and we'll get a son through her. And Father Abraham, I like you so much. I love you so much. But this is the story. That's where we pick up the story. And lo
And
and behold,
and just to camp around here a little bit more, I have a lot of empathy for Abram slash Abraham because if we replace the promised son with whatever it is in our life, um, I question whether I would have done differently. Do you get what I mean? Like when you're in
but
a place of desperation because of how long you've been waiting, um, I almost want to say our judgment is distorted a little. We so badly want to see things come to fruition that we're almost willing to do anything. Like we don't care about the method. Now we're just like, give it to me. And so I hear what you're saying about Abraham, and at the same time, I'm like, ugh, as a human being, I think 90% of us probably would have done the same thing.
but you see also you have to look at it that I'm not judging Abram.
Yeah.
I'm not judging him. I am seeing him in me. And God is calling us. It's as if God is growing us up. He
Yeah.
wants us to be mature sons and daughters and saying, I don't want you to live your life with a desire that controls you, that you are willing to do everything possible, even if it's against my will, to get
Yeah.
what you want.
Yeah.
And that's why this topic of waiting upon the Lord is not an easy one. But God is saying, um, I want you to learn to wait on me. Because when
Go for
when
it.
when Abram and Sarah went ahead
Mhm.
and did what the Lord did not authorize them to do,
Mhm.
not only did they hurt Hagar because now she was in the mix. Now um, Ishmael was also in the mix. But the tension and the fighting that came about, that is what God is trying to save us from when He says, wait.
Mm.
When He says, wait, it is that unnecessary and probably unintended um, tension,
Yeah.
stress that God is saying, don't go down that road, wait on me. So for me, as you said that, something said, oh God, help me. Because literally sin is not so much, we sin when we go, and this is something God has been teaching me. We sin when we go, when we try to get what we desire in ways that are not authorized by the Lord.
Like a
It is
cheap
the way
version,
we get, sorry?
almost like a cheap version. Like he wants to give us, the analogy of a gourmet meal, but because
Mm.
we're so hungry, we're so thirsty, as culture would call it, um, we jeopardize, we're willing to sell ourselves in
We
order.
short circuit
Yeah.
ourselves.
Mm,
So when we talk about waiting on the Lord,
yeah.
for me, it is God saying, wait for the real thing. Wait for me. Because when Abram was a man of faith, Sarah was a woman of faith. It's like you and I.
Yeah.
But they serve as an example to show us how easy it is for the promise to get the better part of us, when actually we will look into that later. um, God is the promise.
Mm,
Can we rest in that? So you asked, what does it mean for you, Mom, to wait on the Lord? It means not only to wait for his timing, but to wait for his ways, for his method. Because true, Abram went ahead and got Ishmael. That was not God's will,
yeah.
but it brought tension and depression and infighting in the family. And now you see Abram, who at one point had a one-minded, a one-track mind. His heart was for Sarah. Now his heart was for two, because now he had Ishmael and Hagar, and he had Sarai. To the point that at one point Sarah, now called Sarah, said, "Cast out the bondwoman and his child, and her child, sorry. She will not be an heir, he will not be an heir with my son." And the Bible says it grieved Abraham because Ishmael was his son.
Mm,
But God came to him in the night and said, "Listen to what Sarah has said. I will bless Ishmael." But the promise was for Isaac. So that's how important it is to wait on the Lord. Is it easy? Absolutely not.
yeah.
But is it worth it? Absolutely. It will save us so much pain. And there are some pains I've gone through for not waiting. Yeah. But it is worth it. So for me to wait on the Lord is to wait on his ways, to wait on his moving. You know, something that really touched me was Jesus always waited. He always said, "My time has not come. You go, it is your time."
Mm,
Jesus was so in tune with his Father that he knew when to be where, he knew when to, you know, and that it is in the waiting on the Lord that he teaches us, he tunes our hearts to walk in tune with him. We'll never be able to do that, to walk in sync with the Father, if we don't learn to wait on him.
mm. That makes sense.
Mm.
But now,
So sorry.
practically though, Mom, because if let's say I'm new to this whole Jesus thing, I'm new to what it means to live a life and spirit-led, devoted to Jesus. What does that look like? Let's say I'm a 17-year-old girl, 25-year-old man, and I'm trying to navigate learning Jesus's ways and waiting on him, so to speak. Um, what does that look like practically? Because and I ask with the backdrop of I've heard at times, people who claim to be Christ followers say, I'm waiting on God, I'm waiting on God. And they just spend their lives waiting, but there's never any action. And I know that's the complete other side of the pendulum. But for those that are genuinely learning to wait on God, I use myself as a guinea pig too, where it's like I want to be in tune with Holy Spirit. And at the same time, I don't want to delay what He's trying to do in my life under the
Mm,
pretense of, oh, I'm just waiting on God.
mm, mm. You know, there is a scripture, I've always told you this. I think it's in Romans 8:15 that says, either 14 or 15, it says, those who are led by the Spirit are the true sons of God.
Mm-hmm.
So to truly wait on God and not for God to be waiting, because the way you've phrased the question is, I don't want to be seated here thinking I'm waiting on God
Yeah.
when I'm missing my moment. And is it easy? No, it's not. But it is, first of all, tuning our hearts to learn to hear God. Because those who are led by the Spirit. So, how will we know if we are waiting on Him or if He's waiting on us unless we learn to be led by Him, to
Mhm.
hear Him? But then the second question, the first thing is to make sure we have heard from Him.
Yeah.
For example, I think we were sharing before the recording the story of Naaman.
Yeah.
Naaman, this man, a Syrian commander in chief who had won so many battles, and he was a great and honorable man that whose king really had faith in him, but he had leprosy.
Mm.
Now, leprosy in those days, in fact, if he had not been a commander, he was supposed to live in the caves away from people.
Yeah.
That's how bad leprosy was.
Mhm.
So here he is. They had done some raiding. They got this slave girl from Israel, and this young girl was waiting upon Naaman's wife, on Naaman's wife, and that story is found in First Kings chapter 5. So he tells the wife and says, I wish my master could go to Israel, to a prophet in Israel. He would, you know, tell him what to do and he would be healed. So, of course, Naaman hears this and he says, okay. He gathers his chariots. The king gives him a letter, sends him to Israel. Instead of going to the prophet, he went to the king. The king of Israel says, now these people are trying to pick a fight with me. Am I God to to make alive and to kill? But Prophet Elisha heard of what was happening, and he said, "Send the man, send that commander to me." So, because the king of Israel had torn his clothes, that was the way to show his frustration, and you know. And then when Naaman, the commander of Syria, who was known for winning battles, came to the prophet. All the prophet did was send a messenger and say, go and dip yourself in River Jordan 7 times, and you will be made whole. Naaman, like many of us, said,
Me?
I thought, I thought the prophet would come, pray for me, wave his hand over me, and I would be healed. He didn't even pay me attention to come and talk to me. He just sent a messenger.
Mm.
But you know what God was doing in that heart? He was poking probably at the pride that we all have. Because he was a decorated man, he expected this prophet to come and pay him some attention. The prophet didn't. Why? Because God knows us more than we know ourselves.
Mm.
So Naaman's pride was poked. And he says, I will go. Aren't there rivers in Syria? The river Abna and river, I think, Puffer or Fupper, something like that. Aren't they cleaner? I'll go and wash if I want to. Until his servant said, had the prophet told you a great thing, wouldn't you have done it? What about going and washing in the river Jordan and be healed? Because that's the instruction. Had Naaman gone back to Syria and not done what God had told him through the prophet, God would have been waiting on Naaman while Naaman was saying, I am waiting on God to heal me.
Mhm.
Because God gave the instruction, and if Naaman didn't obey that instruction, he would have bypassed or he would have foregone his miracle. So, how do we know if we are waiting on God or if He's waiting on us? Because God does wait on us. And unfortunately, maybe many times I have been that Naaman who was saying, oh, that is so small for me. He should have told me a great thing. And I have missed. I have missed God's timing because He's waiting on me to do what He told me. So I would say that the difference between knowing if you are waiting on God or if He's waiting on you is asking yourself, what instruction did the Lord give me? And have I fulfilled it? Have I fulfilled it? If I have done everything He has told me to, and the promise has not yet come, then I am waiting on Him. If He has given me instruction and I have not obeyed Him, then God is waiting on me. So at times He tells us to do something very simple and we get so busy doing all the other things apart from this simple thing. God is waiting on us. You see what I'm saying?
I
So
think,
when
I think so. I'm trying to cut through any possible biblish, and by that I mean any possible thing that could deter us from actually receiving what you're saying. So when you see me pause, when you see me kind of wrestling with it, it's because I'm really trying to tease away, almost like let's imagine a big hunk of meat, and you want to tease away to get to the nitty gritty. So I guess my question would be when navigating, waiting on God, whether we are waiting on God or whether He is waiting on us. Um, what does it mean or what would it look like? I know it's different for different people, but to receive instruction for Him, because some people can take that very literally and say, okay, God didn't tell me to brush my teeth today, so I'm not going to brush my teeth. Versus, okay, God has given me these kids, and now I'm navigating raising these kids and figuring out my calling. Um, does that mean that only after 18 years or till these kids are quote on grown, that then we've transitioned to me waiting on God? Do you get what I'm saying? I'm just trying to
mm,
make it more tangible for us so that when I go to work on Monday, when I go to school, whatever it is, that I can be so aware of, Lord, where are we at? Where do we stand? Just to make it more present in our lives or more on the forefront as opposed to, I believe in this high and mighty God, which I don't, do you know what I mean? That's a bit more distant.
mm, mm, I really believe that we need to be faithful
Yeah.
in what we are doing now as
Mm.
He leads us in what the future. At times I look at my life and I say, okay, I did not know that I would be doing A, B, C, and D how many years ago? but in the faithful doing of what he had given to me on my plate at the time, he
Yeah.
led me to where I am. So if you're a student,
Mhm.
he has given you that on your plate. Will you be faithful in that until he guides you to the next? If you are at school, are you being faithful to shine Christ even to your fellow students until he leads you, you know, until he leads you to the next station in life? Because life just does not, you just don't wake up and it is boom, it's a big thing, and no, it's in the daily mundane things that he says, oh, how did I get here?
Mm.
But in addition to that,
Yeah.
in addition to that, to hear God specifically concerning a few things,
Mhm.
not a few, concerning life. Because
Yeah.
when we come to prayer, as we were sharing, we actually come to hear his instruction, his leading.
Mhm.
That scripture that says, can you read kindly? Can you kindly read Isaiah 28, the last verse?
Yeah. So from the Passion Translation, it's verse 29. It says, "This counsel also comes from Lord Yahweh, commander of angel armies. For his guidance is unfathomable, and the heavenly wisdom he imparts is magnificent."
His guidance is unfathomable, and the heavenly wisdom is magnificent.
Mhm.
So when we come to him, he will guide us. At times, it will just be a promise. I'll give you a son. I'll make you a father of many nations. Other times, he says, you go there, do this. And it's in doing that that the promise will come to you. Does it answer your question?
It does. And I think it leads to that. I guess it's a topic that we all wrestle with, is living in that tension of um, it's already here, but not yet, something to that saying, but we're constantly in this in between stage. It's like we hear the promise, we know that there are great things,
Yeah.
planned for us, and at the same time, we know that it's going to involve some toiling, some work, and then it's
Mm.
navigating that in between. So, what kind of person are we developing in that in between stage? Does
Mm.
that make sense? It's like we're
Mm.
so focused, and it's challenging being in the Western society. We're so goal oriented, which is great. It keeps us on track. But if we miss out on all the in between shaping
Mm.
and molding,
Mm.
I question whether our waiting seasons will be prolonged or not.
Yes.
That makes
Mm.
sense. Like, it's not that we forget the goal is there. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mom, that God is more concerned with the stuff inside, the things that will spill out when we do reach our mountaintop. Like, who
Mm.
have we been when no one has looked? Who have we
Mm.
been? How have we treated people? How have we kept the things He's given us? Like, these can be physical things. How have we physically looked after them? How can He
Mm.
entrust us with more? I'm kind of questioning
Mm.
myself on the testing block. But it's like we're praying and asking for more this, more that, and he's like, "But you haven't even taken care of what I've given you."
Mm. 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 Yeah, you raise such an important question. I mean, point, to say if our journey and who we are in the tension
Mhm.
does prolong our waiting time. I have often asked myself, by the time Abram and Sarah and Hagar, got together and had Ishmael, it
Mhm.
was 10 years in the waiting. And then God did not come in. It was almost another silent, I think 13 or 14 years before God came now and told Abram that, hey, I'm changing your name. And by the way, in the next year, the son that I promised is coming. Abram had so forgotten it, like it was so painful to hold on to the promise that Abram probably said, "It's okay, God. I have Ishmael. You don't have to give me another." So bad was it that he laughed and he said,
Faraloft.
"No, both."
Oh,
Abram was the first one to laugh. Sarah was confronted by the Lord,
yeah,
but Abram laughed.
yeah,
And he said, "Oh, that you would bless Ishmael." It's like, I'm done with that. But will you bless Ishmael? And God said, I will bless Ishmael, surely.
yeah.
But my promise, the child of promise is the child of faith,
Mm,
is still coming. Because you see, in fact, when I look at it, I see that the promise was more for Sarah than it was for Abram, because Abram could have children. It was Sarah who couldn't. So now to say that I went out and got a child with Hagar, you are cutting out the person that God intended to bless. So you have filled yourself with something that you've done in your own power
mm.
rather than the promise of God. So God says, no, Abram. In fact, I'm changing your name to Abraham.
Yeah.
And I want you now to pick up faith and believe that Sarah, who at the time was 89 or coming to 90, will bear a child. And in my life, I have said, Lord, how many times have I created Ishmaels
Mm,
that God never intended me to create? And I have suffered for years and prolonged my time of waiting, or and foregone the promise of the Father. When God says wait, wait. Because to do it any other way is to hurt yourself. So I was saying, God, could it be that Abram and Sarai going the other route,
yeah.
yeah, involving Hagar, could have prolonged the time of the coming of Ishmael? Is it possible?
Mm,
Or was the timing that?
mm,
You see what I'm saying?
mm,
It's a difficult one, but it's a topic that God desires for us to grasp and to live by,
mm.
because He is creating in us sonship and daughtership, if that one is there. Mm.
Yeah.
If Christ could wait and would not go to the cross before his time, then he's saying, because Jesus is the standard.
Mm,
Oh God, it pricks my heart because I know I have failed at it so often.
mhm,
And the tears we cry, you can imagine Sarah crying tears because, yes, Ishmael was born, but Ishmael was never hers.
mm,
Ishmael only caused, in fact, at some point, the Bible says when she was winning Isaac, she caught Ishmael mocking. Now, Ishmael was at that time in his teens,
mm,
but he didn't want to see this child of promise. And you will see that our children of the flesh and the children of the spirit will always be at loggerheads. And he was mocking. And that's when Sarah said, no, this child will not be part of the inheritance. And he was not supposed to be.
Mhm.
So is it possible that going our way, going our way prolongs our time of waiting? God help us.
Mhm.
God help us. What other No, first, let me ask, first of all, have you ever had to wait on the Lord for something? And if so, if you don't have to say what it was, but if you feel free to say it, you can share it, or you can just tell us and how you were able to wait, and if you were able to wait.
I'll put it this way. I am in a season of waiting. So this message hits home on another level.
Mm,
And at the same time, it's a muscle that is being worked. So I have been in seasons of waiting. I am in a season of waiting, and I will be in seasons of waiting.
mm,
So I feel like that's a very relevant question to all of us, which we can absolutely dive into in our second episode of season two. For now, I would love to leave our listeners with this thought, and Mom, please weigh in as we wind down. And that is now looking at it from a distance, looking at Abram and uh, Sarai's situation. I see the kindness of God because think about it. He really could, if he wanted to, he could have said, you know what? You didn't do it the right way. Doors closed. No more promised child for you. I can pick somebody
mm,
else more suitable. But in his kindness, he
mm.
says, sweetheart, you missed the mark, and you'll probably miss the mark again. But this promise is for you, and I'll wait, and I'll help you clean up the mess. It's going to be more painful than I intended, but
Oh,
this
yeah.
is for you. To me, it shows the intentionality of God. But listeners, we're going to dive deep. We're running out of time, so we just want to thank you for spending time with us as we make sense of this confusing world with the Bible as our
Mm.
compass.